Hi, I'm Paige Peters, founder and CTO of Rapid Radicals Technology, and I beat the often path by developing a technology that can treat wastewater about 20 times faster than conventional treatment. Our technology is something I developed in grad school. I started a company to commercialize it and transfer it to the market, building a wonderful team along the way, and our hopes and dreams to improve water quality and public health for communities in the United States and across the world.
Did you know that when it rains, billions and trillions of gallons of raw, untreated sewage, that's right, sewage, goes into stuff like lakes, rivers, and oceans near you? It's actually a tremendous problem without an easy solution. Well, joining me today is the founder and CTO of Rapid Radicals. I'm talking to Paige Peters, a brilliant woman who has dedicated her life to this extremely niche and unsexy problem that genuinely affects every single person on the planet. Rapid Radicals' innovative high-rate wastewater treatment technology originally was developed to address combined sewer overflows for municipal sewerage districts. This is going to be a real fun one. I'm Ross Palmer. This is the Beat the Often Path podcast, and joining us right now is Paige Peters. You know, I got to imagine, first of all, welcome to the show. I got to imagine there's a lot of people listening. They're tuning in. They've got their cup of coffee. It's time for a podcast. Nothing screams I'm ready to face the day in the morning like talking about raw sewage, right? Who isn't excited about this topic? I know I am.
Well, I am not the right person to ask that question to because it is my absolute favorite thing to talk about. Interestingly,
I'd like to remind the audience that you can't say raw sewage without saying Ross. So anytime they think of sewage, they have to think of my face and voice. That's what I'm asking of them.
Well, I actually think that's great branding, and I wonder if maybe we can work with you on that.
There's a partnership there somewhere.
Well, you can't really start your day without contributing to my research. So actually,
That's
at my
true.
PhD defense, my technology is treating raw sewage. It's dilute raw sewage during storm events to eliminate that raw sewage going into waterways. But I thanked everybody in the audience for contributing to my research during my PhD defense because they did. I got a lot of samples over a lot of time.
Yeah, and you have to thank everybody, all of the patrons of Taco Bell for contributing extra to your research. Some people have contributed multiple times in a given day. All right, let's get our minds out of the gutter, or into the gutter, as it were, because it's gutters that we're talking about, because it's this raw, unfiltered sewage that goes through the gutters, goes through the pipes, and it is coming out in Great Lakes, rivers, oceans, everywhere. So what is this problem, broadly speaking?
Broadly speaking, it's a very complex problem, and at Rapid Radicals, we've worked hard to find the way to describe it in a way that kind of allows you to contextualize the problem and visualize how bad it is without it being like, oh, it's just so big I can't even fathom it. Because the reality is it's so big it's hard to fathom, but it's our job to bring people into this story because it affects everybody. Everybody, like we just talked about, everybody contributes to it. But broadly speaking, the problem, I'll focus on that in the States here, is that every year, 850 billion gallons of untreated sewage are discharged into our lakes and rivers due to sewer overflows that occurred during intense storm events. And these storm events are only getting more intense and more frequent, with increasing concerns around climate change, increasing urbanization, population growth. But 850 billion gallons is equivalent to 170,000 Mississippi rivers filled with poop water. So we like to say, if you've ever wondered how much a shit ton is, well, that's it. And it's a problem that's getting worse because we haven't been adequately investing in our infrastructure, because it's something that's really hard for people to understand. It's hard to get your head around it, but you can't live in a city without infrastructure. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve. And as we have this platform, trying to engage other people into it, talking about it in a way that people can understand. That's not just like, oh, that's a bigger problem than me, because it's not. This problem is as big as each of us as individuals.
Here in California, there's this bit of wisdom that suggests that you shouldn't go surfing after a rainstorm. So are you saying that that is true in not just coastal places, but places near any waterway?
We say the same thing here in Milwaukee. Wait, I mean, there's a there is a way in which nature heals herself. So we put sewage out into a waterway. It will ultimately either be diluted, be broken down by organisms, microorganisms in the water. It'll wash away from shore to where it's no longer really a problem for human interaction. That will happen. And we usually say 24 to 72 hours, depending on how bad the storm is. So I think it's also really important to note that here in Milwaukee, and I work with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District on the work that we do. So they funded my graduate research, some of the first pilot efforts that we did, and they're a great advocate for the work that we're doing and helping them meet their goal of these zero sewer overflows and zero basement backups. But they still treat about 99.2% of all the water that exists within our sewer area. So it's just demonstrating that it's so much water. It's bigger than what we can fathom, and we just have an infrastructure that people don't want rates to go up. But unfortunately, we're getting to a point where you have to be a lot more accountable than you were in the past, especially if you want to recreate in the water, if you want to go surfing after it rains.
So we glossed over maybe the biggest selling point of what you've done, which you said, okay, normally this stuff takes 8 hours to process. We can do it in 30 minutes. What is the traditional path? What is different about your approach, and how did you end up there?
So the idea again came with working with my academic advisor, Dan Zittimer, and thinking there's these technologies that exist. They've never been combined before. We can work on them in a lab setting with support from utilities to make sure that what we're doing. So this was a really important thing for me, and I do believe this is part of what helped the technology itself be successful in the research phase, is that I came from industry. I was in consulting for 3 years, and when I went back to grad school, I didn't want to sit in a lab and just do fundamental research. I have great respect for those who do fundamental research, who are finding new molecules or literally developing understanding new mechanisms for treatment, whatever that might be. But I really wanted to take it from that practical approach. And we were funded by some industry university collaborative research dollars. So I knew I'd have that industry focus and that the thing that we were working on would be practical and applicable. So it gave this background to all of the research that I did, that we did, that it had to have some practical approach. We had to consider the operational challenges, which you typically don't do when you're doing fundamental graduate research. But I appreciated that. It was important to me. It helps me understand the impact of it better and really get into it. So the technologies that we utilized, one of them is sort of known within the space of wet weather treatment, which is it's called chemically enhanced primary treatment. So you knock out solids that are in wastewater really quickly. And we know if we could combine that with another known technology called advanced oxidation processes, which is the development of, bear with me, which is the development of something called the hydroxyl radical, which is the strongest oxidant known to science. The more you produce, the faster you produce them.
It's also the name of my band. Go ahead.
Yeah, the hydroxyl radical. But that's where rapid radicals came from. We rapidly produce radicals.
Of course. Right.
Well, yeah, I know you knew that, Ross. I
didn't know anything. My brain is the size of a peanut. I just nod and smile like I understand. I'm just trying to make you feel good. I have no clue what you're talking about. It sounds great, though.
But it's essentially combining those two types of technologies. And then in doing that, we developed our own proprietary type of oxidation process. And the other thing I'll say is that conventional wastewater treatment has, for over 100 years, been a biological process, and it works really well. But it takes at least 6 hours because it's bugs. Bugs move slowly. Microorganisms are amazing.
Bugs. Okay.
It's fascinating what they can do to break down organics, to convert nutrients. It's an incredible process, but it's not a process particularly compatible with a large rush of water during a storm event because they can't really eat any faster. And if we bypass the biological, then we miss out on some of that really good treatment that happens. And that's not a process we really want to be implemented regularly. So again, we're taking advantage of these known technologies, combining them in a way that's never been done before, making them better in a way that is practical to the industry, And then the effluent or the outcome, the water quality that leaves our treatment system meets Clean Water Act permit requirements. And that's always been the expectation.
You said we haven't always been so interested in recreating on the lakes and on the rivers. And it reminds me of reading, I think it was the book Titan that chronicles the life of Rockefeller, if I'm not mistaken, in Ohio and Standard Oil. And it talks about a period of time where the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland was just on fire. The entire river caught fire because people just dumping crap into it. Chemicals, whatever, who cares? It's just a river. And then only recently did people sort of say, hey, maybe we should use them for something other than that. When do you think that shift began? I do want to get into the price point thing, but when do you think the shift began?
Yeah, the Cuyahoga lighting on fire there's a handful of environmental landmark cases like that or historic events like that. The Cuyahoga River lighting on fire was really the beginning of the Clean Water Act and around the same time as the EPA being formed. And it's a great question to when, because it's hard to think now. I mean, we love like living on water, having like water property is such a status symbol.
Yeah.
So desirable. And it wasn't always, especially in these Rust Belt cities. So from the Great Lakes region perspective, it's clear from the development of the economies that industry had to be paramount. We had to build, and whatever came off of what we built just had to go away. And that could be in whatever way you wanted to. I mean, and that's not just the manufacturing that was going on or the manufacturing waste that led to the Cuyahoga being lit on fire. But, we're going back even further to when Chicago was having cholera outbreaks because the drinking water their wastewater was also their drinking water. The same source was, in Lake Michigan.
Who knew? Yeah.
So they dug the sanitation canal, and now they reversed the flow of the Chicago River so that their wastewater would go down to the Mississippi and become St. Louis's problem. Is that everyone's downstream is someone else's upstream.
Yeah.
And
if you ever make that T-shirt, by the way, if you ever make somebody else's downstream as somebody else's upstream, if you put that on a T-shirt, I will be one of the 10 people that buy it from you. I love that. That's a nerd joke.
Got so many good catchphrases.
And now I'm on the inside.
One of the taglines we thought about for our new pilot that we're building right now was we just wanted to have like a cool tagline for it, and we were like, I mean, you've already referenced Adam Sandler once, but in Happy Gilmore, when Shooter goes, "I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast."
Like you for breakfast. You eat shit for breakfast?
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? We just would be like, we eat pieces of shit for breakfast. Like the Rapid Radicals treatment system. Yes. That's what we do. So we've got taglines galore.
Nerd humor at its best.
Puns.
I love it.
Poop jokes. Yeah. But, I think it's a really great question to think, like, when did that mindset shift come in? And there's a lot of pieces. Again, when you look at like the beginning of the EPA, Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, our understanding of DDT, of these chemicals. I think it was that a lot of things started happening around that same time, that we were becoming better at talking about them and letting the information that we were gathering essentially access more people in mass. I mean, obviously the internet wasn't around yet, but whatever we could do, we were becoming more mobile. We were sharing information. So the magnitude of the problem was finally starting to be understood. It wasn't just that the Cuyahoga was lighting on fire. It was that birds weren't, like the shells were too weak, birds weren't surviving into the spring. All these things were starting to happen, and as they came together and people were rightfully pissed off, there was a movement in mindset. And you could say that about so many of the movements that we've ever seen. It's I believe it's a Margaret Mead quote that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. I mean, I think about that all the time.
It's a beautiful sentiment. I think about it too. Yeah.
We're doing the best that we can with what we have. And once you learn something, you can't unlearn it. Once you test for it, you got to do something about it. Once you gather that data, you have that information, you have a responsibility to act on it.
I appreciate what you're doing. It's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating subject. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom. We're at the end of our hour, obviously. So is there anything that you would like to promote, or where can people find you and support your work? And of course, buy that T-shirt everybody's downstream is somebody else's upstream.
Honestly, we got to get on that. Well, thank you, Ross, for helping me tell the story and for promoting this story.
My pleasure.
It's an important story to tell. It's not obviously just my story, the problem that we're seeking to solve related to pollution, related to environmental protection, public health, water quality, all these big concepts. It's a lot of people's stories. It's a struggle that a lot of people have every day. I'm working on a small piece of it to move the state of that to a better place. If you want to learn more about Rapid Radicals Technology, our website is just www.rapidradicals.com. We're on the socials. We're learning how to be better about Instagramming and trying to find ways to make wastewater sexy. We're really working on it right now to find different ways to tell jokes and stories to make it accessible. So if there's anyone listening who's got an idea, I am all ears on that. But you can find us on the socials. We've got some videos available to tell more about the tech, and we've got a new pilot project that's launching in about a month, and we'll be really active telling that story and engaging people in that journey. So please come find us and talk to us, and I will talk to anybody about this. So if this is an interest, I think the biggest thing that we can do is keep talking about it. We've seen how powerful that can be in other movements in human history, and I want this to be the next one.
Yep, and she's not kidding, folks. I'm living proof that she will talk to literally anybody about this. So don't take those words lightly. Thanks again. And with that, the official podcast is over.